Jesus is speaking from John's Gospel. He says, I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek to do not my own will, but the will of the one who sent me. If I testify about myself, my testimony is not true. There is another who testifies on my behalf. I know that the testimony which that one bears to me is true. The works that God has given me to complete, the very works that I am doing, testify on my behalf that God has sent me. Just a short reading, and I was reflecting this morning in meditation about this tremendous, tremendous challenge that every human being faces in the toil of surrendering their own will. But the misconception is that there is some almighty power that is trying to get you to follow its will, right? This is how people phrase it. I want to live God's will. I want to do God's will. Yes, we do want to do God's will. But the reason that the path creates so much inner turmoil and tension is because of this perception that that will is somehow contrary to the will, to my will. And when Jesus speaks about it here, it really is, to me, it's so key that you have the experience of this process, because it's very easy to interpret this in a way that I think does not really make the path all that attractive. You know, the idea that I have to follow somebody else's will. Okay, it's God, so it's probably good. But I don't want to. Yeah, that's normal. We love to do what we want to do, when we want to do it, and how we want to do it. That is just, we wake up and go, yes. And we believe that that's freedom. So as I was meditating on freedom, I remembered Martin Luther King in his speech, I have a dream that one day, and his quest was freedom of the Negro. That's how we used to refer it back in the 60s. Black people were Negro. Because the African American, the black people, whatever, they were not free. They could not vote, they could not drink out of the same water fountain, they could not be in the same places that normal Americans could. So he took it upon himself, and with all the supporters of him, he was the voice of liberation for a certain sector of society. And I don't know how many thousands of people were present when he made the I Have a Dream speech, but when you listen to him, he's a great speaker. Now the thing is, he says, I have a dream that one day, okay? Now, today is the one day for us, because we are doing the liberation. I mean, your cause may not be the African American people, okay, and that's fine. Your cause is the freedom within your own self. And this is our theme for the summer, the mind's true liberation. If the mind is not liberated, the entire being will be constrained. So we all humbly go, no matter how far along I am on the path, my mind is bound to a certain degree. It is not yet free. What does it look like for the mind to be free? Well, it's very simple, that the will of God is that, as Jesus said, that we would love one another as I have loved you. That's really it. Okay, how do you implement that? How do I truly love others as I have been loved? How do I fulfill a mission of goodness? We could sit here and get all excited. I mean, people were ecstatic when they heard Martin Luther King's speech, because he fills you with that spirit of love and truth, the inspiration, the movement of the Spirit. But then when you go, okay, I'm going to do it, I mean, they ended up shooting him, right? Somebody ended up assassinating him. So clearly not everybody was on board with the inspiring speech. And we talk about this in our Bible class, how part of us doesn't really want to have to go through with this. the implementation of the true liberation of myself. Because I want to do what I want to do. Well, you know what? You can do what you want to do. But when you have begun to awaken, you realize that there is a price if I do what I want to do. Right? And enough of us has awakened to go, that price is too high. It's difficult for me to make the choice to just pursue what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it, because I feel that it goes against this emerging will in me. And I have tremendous empathy and compassion for the struggle that that creates. It seems to be suspiciously bad timing. And yet it's perfect timing. Who could have predicted that following a baptism, you would be faced with a difficult decision? But to me, that is the hand of God, because God is going, you tell me. You tell me how you want to identify from this point on. And it's not a wagging finger type of energy. It's really, you have the opportunity to choose how you want to proceed in life. There are some souls who have this burning desire to want to simply be children of God in the sense that we want to do good. We want to love our brothers and sisters. We want to be representations of a soul who is fulfilling the pattern of love and goodness. That seems to be a rare thing. We have a lot of people who talk about it, but we don't have a lot of people who actually do it. So, hats off to those who choose to walk the way, because it's grueling. It's grueling to have to figure out, how do you love people? How do you love yourself? How do you love God? How are you going to identify from this moment on? Are you going to forever see yourself as a mother, as a father, as an executive, as a scientist, as a musician, as a lowlife, as a free spirit? I mean, how are you going to identify yourself? Are you going to identify yourself as a follower of Christ, seeking to live in Christ consciousness and to turn to the Father, Mother, to the best of your ability and go, I seek to be a good person upon this earth, loving my brothers and sisters as I have been commanded to do? What is it that makes a soul want that over anything else? I don't know. But if you love truth and you love the righteousness of God, then maybe that's your answer. It's love, love of truth. Truth just feels smooth. Falsity does not. And there's no way around that. That's easy as long as that truth, that smooth truth, is something that's relatively easy to choose. But when that smooth truth is not easy to choose, oh man, the angst is intense. So then people, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through such a grueling process? There's no explanation. Jesus said, is it not what you ought to have done? He talks about the servant comes in from working in the field all day. And then the master is, you're supposed to prepare the master's food. And are you supposed to then eat with the master? No, you'll eat after. Right? And of course, we the humans go, this is so unfair. We're treated like, basic peons. And Jesus goes, this is what you ought to do. You ought to learn how to serve. Because in so doing, there is true liberation. It's interesting this week, there's been many opportunities where I have found people needed a favor done for me, I needed a favor done, and all these people doing favors for each other. And if people were all like, no, I don't feel like it, I'm not going to do it, it's just, life is hard when you don't help each other out. But luckily, people were helping me and I was helping them, and it's just the flood of grace moving, because it just feels good to help people out until it conflicts with, something that you really want to do. And then it's painful. It's a sacrifice. And you go, well, can I give? Yeah. Do I want to? No. So then I have to make a choice. Am I going to fulfill the will of God, which is very simply love one another? This person needs something. I can provide it. Yeah, it's a minor inconvenience. Just do it. Deal with that tension within. just because it's the right thing to do, just because it helps somebody out, not because you're going, well, maybe they'll help me in the future, and karmically this is a good thing for me, and all this kind of stuff, all this justification where I'm still too prominent. So do you have the dream to be liberated, right? To have the mind liberated. So that when something happens that triggers anger in you, you have to go, my mind is free, therefore I have to choose how am I going to, there's nothing wrong with anger. But how I choose to respond, what energy I then put out as a result of the anger, that's when I can see if my mind has been liberated. Anger simply tells me that my dignity has been crossed. Sometimes it's the perception that my dignity has been crossed. For example, let's say somebody has got a newborn child, and the child starts crying in the middle of the night, the person wakes up and is angry. Okay, well, the child is not affronting your dignity. But the reaction of like, I don't get to have the sleep that I used to have, okay, that can create some anger and irritation. But you could have somebody lying in the bed next to you who's like, we have a child, so we get up in the middle of the night. That's just what we do. So that person may not register it as anger because in their perception, they don't experience the dignity against their soul or the affront to their dignity. So you see, sometimes the perception of it is off, which is why we don't immediately come out of the gate responding in the anger. However, we honor if we feel it, because that's a form of love. You are true to the fact that you feel something. Then you decide, how am I going to proceed? In order to follow God's will means I do what I believe is right. And how many decisions you have to make every day based on this, what I just described. I feel something, I'm tempted to think in a certain way. I mean, the farther along you go, when you hear people speak, you will hear the tremendous misconceptions that people have in contrast to the simplicity of living a life of love and goodness. And people, I mean, the thing is, the mind is very sophisticated. Last night I was hanging around with somebody and they were saying, well, I live by, and he had some Latin expression, which means, I think, therefore I am. So that's something that a lot of people believe. Well, I think and therefore I exist. And I don't need God for that. I mean, it's like, I think, therefore I am. That's the basis of how I perceive life. Well, we learn here that the thinking is not always reliable. And so if we stop there and go, I think, therefore I am, I put a tremendous amount of credence in my mind as that which defines who I am. Well, we all know that that's problematic, right? Because we can justify the times when we want to do something based on thinking our way into that. So again, that's not freedom. Freedom to hear and feel and act upon the will of God, meaning the will to love one another, to choose a life of goodness. That's what we're seeking. And I want to keep reminding us that we're seeking to liberate our minds. The thing is that the behaviors are shown up not so much because people can't see the churning of the mind, but it's in the facial expressions, it's in the things you say, it's in the way you tighten up, because the mind is tightening up around something, as opposed to going, I have a challenging situation, I have to look at it and make a decision. And it's very relaxed, right? Yes, I have a lot of feelings about it, but it's not crippling my whole life. I mean, and it may be, but there'll be a point where it isn't. Or you just go, the Lord would not put me through this type of trial unless there is some goodness to come of it, some liberation to come of it. You have to remember, by stepping on the path and choosing to walk it, you're going to be facing these trials because God is giving you the opportunity to make the choice as to, are you really backing your word? Are you really wanting to walk this way? It's not forced. You don't have to. If you feel that compelling need to live a truthful life and to be liberated from all the ideas of how you've thought yourself to be, then you have to be placed at the moment of decision multiple times. So let's not hate that process. Let's go, thank God we're not forced to choose one way or the other. We are always given the opportunity to choose. And our prayer should not be, God, make it easier for me. Because that's not how it works. Our prayer may be, let me have the strength and the courage to continue to choose a life of goodness and love. That's the freedom that we want. The freedom to choose the life of love and goodness over and over and over again.